Joining us now is White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. Sarah, thanks for coming on with us this morning. A busy morning for the president, busy morning on Capitol Hill. What can you tell us about the state of things at this moment ahead of that noon vote today?
Look, we're still hopeful that the Democrats will quit holding our military families, vulnerable children across this country hostage, pass a funding bill so we can move forward and have the conversation they want to have. Look, there is legislation on the floor that they don't disagree with. It's absolutely mind-boggling that they can't figure out how to vote yes on something that they agree with across the board so that they can have the conversation they want to have. It doesn't seem like it takes a rocket scientist to figure it out. They're throwing a 2-year-old temper tantrum. Hopefully they'll get over that and we can move on and start having that conversation on immigration reform after they reopen the government.
Sarah, does the president have any assurances that the votes that are needed are there for this procedural vote at noon?
Look, we're still working towards that. Nothing final at this point. Again, we're going to continue pushing both Republicans and especially pushing Democrats to get on board, reopen our government, fully fund our government so that we can start focusing on things like that immigration reform conversation that they are desperate to have. And so are we. We want a deal on DACA. We want a deal on border security, ending chain migration, ending the visa lottery system. These are things that we also, for the most part, all agree on. It doesn't seem like it should be that hard. Democrats have got to stop playing political games. The president has laid out very clearly what he wants to see. And hopefully they'll come to the table and we can start this process.
Clearly, the president is blaming Democrats for the reason we are here today, day 3 of this shutdown. Who specifically does the president take issue with, Sarah?
Look, I think it's any Democrat that is not voting to reopen our government. I think that effort is being led certainly by Senator Schumer, but there are a number of other Democrat senators that could have voted and didn't. There are a few that have, I think, shown some real courage and stepped up and done the right thing in supporting funding our government, but there are plenty that haven't, and I think any one of them that isn't is part of the problem.
You know, Lindsey Graham, we've been hearing a bit from him through all of this, and he says the White House is partly to blame for this shutdown, Sarah, and he's taking it specifically at Stephen Miller, the White House senior policy advisor. Listen to this.
The reason we yank these things back is because Mr. Miller, I know he's passionate, I know he's an early supporter of the president, but I'll just tell you his view of immigration has never been in the mainstream of the Senate. And I think we're never going to get there as long as we embrace concepts that cannot possibly get 60 votes.
Does the president have a response to Lindsey Graham's words there on Stephen Miller?
Look, I think it's ridiculous when a United States senator is calling out an advisor to the president. Look, this is the president's agenda. Stephen Miller is certainly part of that conversation, part of this process, but he's advocating on behalf of the president. The things that have been laid out by this administration were dictated by the president, and he's the one that wants to see these things. Frankly, I think what is sad is that Lindsey Graham doesn't. I don't know why any United States senator wouldn't support border security, ending chain migration, ending the visa lottery system. It is almost appalling to me that you have a senator that isn't stepping up, doing the right thing. Look, we want to make a deal on DACA. We want to do these things. And the fact that he's not part of the conversation to help move that ball forward and is instead attacking individual members of the president's staff, I think shows the lengths of what they're going to blame people for their own failures. And I think it's time that they stop playing political games, come to the table, get serious, and do their jobs.
The president's kept a bit of a low profile over the weekend. We know he invited Chuck Schumer to the White House for that meeting on Friday. We didn't see a whole lot of change or come from that meeting, but he's laid low, somewhat low over the weekend. Has the president, would you say, remained actively engaged in first trying to avoid the shutdown, now that we're in it, trying to reopen the government?
Absolutely. The president's been incredibly engaged. He's talked to a number of members over the weekend. He's also had his staff working with members on both the House and Senate side and trying to advocate for reopening the government. Look, I think what we saw on Friday was the president's attempt to try to work with Chuck Schumer. I think the disappointment there is that Senator Schumer showed he was not an honest broker in this process, and that's certainly unfortunate. But this president has been working all weekend long, continuing to receive updates from his cabinet and his staff and managing the shutdown. Frankly, we'd love for our focus and the president's focus to be on having conversations about immigration reform, but instead we're having to talk about how we manage and mitigate the damage that the Democrats have done by imposing the shutdown on our country, on our military, on our country's most vulnerable children. Hopefully they'll stop playing these games. We'll get the government reopened today, and then we can start having that conversation and a lot of the other serious conversations that Americans hope that we can have, because we're not focused on the back and forth on the shutdown.
So we've got some activity on the Senate floor. Sarah Sanders, we thank you so much for your time this morning. A busy day, that vote coming at noon. Thanks for being here.
This man's had a very long weekend, too. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. He just said a moment ago the noon vote will still stand. So let's drop in and listen for the latest.
Facing our country. All of us want to make life better for the American people. Bearing this in mind, I hope and intend that we can reach bipartisan solutions on issues such as military spending, immigration, and border security, and disaster relief before the February 8th deadline. But yesterday evening, I restated my position that these negotiations can't last forever. Should these issues not be resolved by the time the funding bill before us expires on February 8th, so long as the government remains open, it would be my intention to take up legislation here in the Senate that would address DACA, border security, and related issues, as well as disaster relief, defense funding, health care, and other important matters. Let me be clear. This immigration debate will have a level playing field at the outset and an amendment process that is fair to all sides. This immigration debate will have a level playing field at the outset and an amendment process that's fair to all sides. And it would be my strong preference for the Senate to consider a proposal that can actually be signed into law. A bipartisan, bicameral group is already negotiating, and I look forward to completion of its work. But it's abundantly clear that the Senate cannot make progress on any of these crucial matters until the government is reopened. We need to move forward. And the first step, the very first step, is ending the shutdown. It's evident that this government shutdown is doing nothing, absolutely nothing, to generate bipartisan progress on the issues the American people care about. Every day we spend arguing about keeping the lights on is another day we cannot spend negotiating DACA or defense spending or any of our other shared priorities. So look, let's join together, put the filibuster behind us, and get back to work for the American people.